Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's department budget hearing. Today's Wednesday, May 1st, 2024. We have two presentations tonight, Hartford Public Library and the Hartford Parking Authority. I am Councilman Amilcar Hernandez. I am the chair of the Operations, Management, Budget, and Government Accountability Committee. This meeting is broadcasting live on HPA-TV's Xfinity Government Channel 96 and Frontier Government Channel 6032. It will also be streamed via hpa-tv.org, the HPA-TV Facebook page, and HPA-TV Apple TV, Amazon TV, and Roku TV apps. It will also be made available on the HPA-TV YouTube channel. I would like to acknowledge my peers present here today. On my right, we have Councilwoman Kelly Bilodeau. On my left, Councilman John Gale and Councilman Josh Micton. Tonight's first presentation will be Hartford Public Library, and with its president and CEO, Bridget Quinn. Bridget, the floor is yours. Please introduce the team with you tonight here.
Thank you, Councilman. I'm very happy to be here, and the chair of our board, David Barrett, would like to provide some introductory remarks.
So good evening. As Bridget said, my name is David Barrett, and I am honored to serve as chair of the library board. First, we want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss the library with you and present our budget for fiscal year 2025. We also thank you for your support of the library financially and in so many other ways. The partnership between the city and the library is strong, and you play a key role in that partnership, so thank you. Bridget is going to present the nuts and bolts of what the library has been up to and the budget, but let me offer just a few key points. First, I'd like to thank our board, which is very involved in the oversight of the library. Besides our audit, development, finance, and governance committees, we have special task forces that work with the administration on our major capital projects, the restoration of downtown, the expansion at Albany, and the construction of Barber. As one example, our development committee is participating in the preparation of a strategic plan to maximize giving through strengthening our development department. And we have two members of our development department here with us tonight to illustrate the importance we place on development. I want to note that the library is celebrating its 250th anniversary. To recognize the anniversary, we have a special website, hpl250.org. I encourage you to go there to see a 250-year timeline documenting our history and the history of Hartford. And there's also a feature, still really cool, 250 years of books that offers selections from our archives documenting books published each decade for the past 2.5 centuries. And I learned today that we've had 661 views of that already, which may not be in the Taylor Swift realm, but we're still pretty pleased. Bridget will offer further details on the anniversary and the upcoming celebrations in her presentation. Recently, we introduced a new brand for the library. You can see some of it here. We have a brief video explaining this transition to show during Bridget's portion of the presentation. Now, of course, all of you are aware of the flood in December 2022 at the main library. Bridget will show some visuals of the before and after. Currently, the community room, known as the Center for Contemporary Culture, is open for community use, scheduled events, and our main floor classrooms are in use. The cafe also has opened on Main Street. Work on the ground and first floors is estimated to be completed in the fall of this year of 2024, which will allow for additional public spaces in the downtown library to open. The UConn Hartford classrooms and the UConn Hartford library are anticipated to resume service in early 2025. During the repair and design review process, we recognized a tremendous opportunity to improve the functionality of the downtown library's interior spaces with a focus on operational efficiencies like the redesign of ceilings, lightings, and HVAC, as well as customer experience and service delivery. Work to repair and renovate the areas which will become the expanded, enhanced adult learning center and the American Place is set to begin in the fall of 2024 with an opening planned in 2025. The renovated library will have additional classroom and technology training spaces and dedicated space for HPL studios. It will also offer quiet study and community retreat spaces and an additional performing arts and event space to allow for more community programming. Finally, let me repeat something I said a year ago. We recognize that the library is a trusted institution, that it is valued and appreciated. We intend to maintain that trust by continuing to listen and respond to the community's needs. And this is where your support is so vital. The funding the city provides is essential to our continued service to the community. I'm happy to answer any questions now or after Bridget's presentation. Again, let me thank you for your support and encourage you to approve the library budget as submitted by the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to introduce my colleague, Chris Francois, who is new to HPL. He is our finance manager and will be here this evening helping with the presentation. Carl Fisher, who many of you know has been our long-term finance director, is celebrating with his daughter. It's her birthday this evening, so I figured that that was an important thing for him to do, although he did offer to be here, but that is the only reason he's not here is, I think, a pretty important one. So why don't we go ahead and get started. All of you, I know the library, and I do want to echo David's remarks and thanks for your support, for all that you do for the library and provide for us. We have a wonderful relationship with the council and with the city and view the partnership with you as integral to what we do. We share the mission of wanting to make sure we're providing this resource for our community so that people can learn and engage and be part of what is a really robust, wonderful cultural, educational, and civic life here in Hartford. And the vision of that is looking ahead to ensure that people we serve are inspired to learn and to engage and to create and to think about a future that involves them and a path to get there. But I want to really focus too on this, on the idea of co-creating, and I share that because we as a library, Hartford Public Library, as well as libraries across the country, but definitely in Hartford, are working to make sure that our community is not only passively engaging with us or just viewing us as a way to be consumers of information. Next slide. We are envisioning a future where we are moving from being collectors, the library as a collector or a curator, to one that is facilitating our community to be creators and to contribute to that content. And that is empowering for a community. So, the past libraries have been looking at databases and saying, oh, this is a great one I'll have for my community for people to use, or these are the books that I'm going to choose for my community to use. But we have a community that is incredibly talented, creative, and they have content to share as well, whether it's music or film or literature or poetry, or their educational skills. So we are in the midst of a huge shift from being, as I said, passive content collectors to facilitating this kind of content creation and production within our community. Next slide. And how are we doing that? We're doing that in a myriad of ways. We're doing that through HPL Studios, with a focus on film and audio, as well as classes and instructional support for people that may want to look at how to be content creators. I mean, our next generations, right? I mean, they are constantly creating content. They are always looking at a way to, whether it, to communicate differently through different mediums and channels of communication. It's not just print anymore, right? And it's not just being consumers of that content, it's how to contribute to that, and how do we as the library collect, store, and also share out with the world what is happening here in Hartford. So the Beat is local musicians that we enable to have a platform to share their music. They actually get paid for their music, and then we share it out. We're doing podcasting classes. We're doing film classes. I'm going to talk about 250 Stories in a little bit. Thoughts Are Things is a film that was produced by a local filmmaker that is part of our staff. His name is Chris Brown, and that is a film that's being shared all over the country, and we can do more of that. And these are the kinds of things that empower our community and not only create the opportunity to share stories, but also to teach valuable skills that can then be used for career opportunities and future employment. We also have the Digital Library Lab, which I talked a lot about last year, but that is moving along, and we do that in partnership with the city as well. Their story, Biblioboard, the Library of Things, these are all examples of ways that we're engaging differently with our community and enabling them to have an active participation with the resources that we have, not just a passive one. So let's talk a little bit about HPL Studios and 250 Stories. 250 Stories has come to pass because of our 250th anniversary. So our HPL Studios staff, which is Christopher Brown and Sam Sigeman, are collecting 250 stories of impact from across our city. And we have an example of one of those stories I'd like to share. That is our new tagline. Thank you. 250 years of Hartford Public Libraries, 250 years of excellence. So thank you, Councilman, for being a part of our 250 Stories. I know when we first met, it was after the flooding. It was when we were having a press conference about the flooding, and you started telling me about your library story. And that was part of the idea of this 250 Stories, is like there are so many examples of people that have been inspired by, just their lives have been changed by libraries, and we need to capture that and make sure that those stories are being preserved for the future. So thank you for contributing, and thank you for our new tagline. It was absolutely fabulous. So that effort will continue on. All right, next slide. So as David mentioned, it is our 250th anniversary. There are only less than a handful of libraries that can claim an origin story that is more than 250 years. We started as the Hartford Library Company in 1774. So our library has its roots earlier than this country was a country. And I think that's a huge thing for us to celebrate, which we are, and to acknowledge that this community has valued libraries and access to libraries for over 250 years, which is pretty incredible. So we started off the year with a lot of celebrations with Joe Young, doing parties in every single location, and we are now gearing up for a big parade on June 1st with our summer learning kickoff, as well as a stop here at City Hall and a stop at the Wadsworth, because that was one of the earliest homes of the library. Then following up with a lot of other really wonderful fun events that are all on 250 HPL 250.org, our website. But I also want to highlight that we have an incredibly talented staff. We are celebrating the launch of the book Carolyn Hewins, First Lady of the Library, which was written by my colleague and staff member Marie Jerry and illustrated by another colleague and staff member, Natalie Curtis. And that is going to launch in October, so stay tuned. We'll invite you to the book launch. And Carolyn Hewins was the librarian at the Hartford Public Library for over 50 years. She is credited with starting children's library services in this country. She was one of the earliest proponents of library services for children. Up until that time, libraries were really adult spaces, and they didn't collect children's materials, they didn't have children's programming, so Carolyn Hewins was transformative in the library world. Part of our launch of the 250th anniversary was also a new look for Hartford Public Library, so we're going to share this with you. So we're pretty excited about our new brand and our new look and our 250th. So it's been a pretty exciting first half of our year of 2024. So I just want to show some highlights. I've also got some graphs at the end of the presentation to show some comparative data. But what I'm highlighting here too is that despite the downtown library being closed, our branch locations have maintained almost the same level of service that we were seeing even when the downtown library was open, which is a huge testament to our community libraries, but also to our residents who have really been very open to going to different locations and seeking out services and collections at our branch locations. So the fact that we're seeing so many visits and materials checked out and computer sessions really shows how vital a resource the Hartford Public Library system is to the people that we serve. Next. The card on your left shows, which is a handout for us that we created to make sure that people knew where all the branch locations were, which is handy so that they can have an easy reference guide. And we are also able to expand access and days of service in our branches post-flood, which we've maintained. And we also opened the West Middle Library as a boundless library. We've been operating at the Rawson Library as a boundless library for the last 5 years, and we have secured funding from the Hartford to extend services at West Middle. So West Middle, which hadn't really been being used except for some classes in a Saturday academy, is now serving as the school library for the West Middle Community School, as well as continuing to serve as a place for the American Place to have classes on the second floor. So we're very happy to be able to expand service at the West Middle School that just launched in January. The next few slides, I'm not going to go through a lot, but I wanted to include, because I wanted to show the level of activity in all of our branch and community locations. Every single library, I mean, this slide presentation with all of the content that I had in here could have been 50 more slides. It was really hard to condense what is happening in our branch locations. But please, when you have a chance, read through and see the incredible work that is happening in our communities every single day, and the amount of people that are availing themselves of the services that are provided through our branch locations. All right, so why don't we skip forward a few to the passport slide, which I think is 16. We offer passport services, which you may have not known or known. We are the city's entity and agent of municipal ID, so we actually provide all of the services for municipal ID for anybody in the city that needs that, but we also offer passports. It's a revenue source for us, but it's also a huge convenience for people because we do it all. We do the photos, we do the passport, we do the application, and so I know many people appreciate being able to do this, as well as all of the other things that people can come into us for, like notary services, or I said the municipal ID. So that is a service I wanted to highlight just to raise awareness of that. Another service, again, these are all highlights, the American Place, which I know you all know of, but I do want to showcase a really nice kind of convergence, this is what we love to see. We do a lot of occupational training and certifications through the American Place and through the work that they do. So I just want to showcase this story of Gerald Green. He was a participant in the American Place's Digital Navigators program, and what has been a wonderful thing is he is now an intern at the Hartford Public Library's Digital Library Lab. So what we're seeing is exactly what we had envisioned. As people come to us, we work with them in programs based on their interest level, and then we're able to help them move along in their career goals as as they express that interest, and then as we have opportunities. So the Digital Library Lab does not only exist as a imaging center or a resource for us as far as a revenue, but also as a career and job training center. And Gerald has been a wonderful addition to that team. He's a paid intern. He's a Hartford resident. He graduated from Pathways, and now he's thinking about a degree in computer science. So these are the kind of success stories we see in all of our locations every day, and we're just really thrilled to have Gerald as part of our team. Another example is the Barriers Can't Stop Us program. We have some fabulous young people that have been going through that program. That is a program where students that come to the United States in high school, they are English language learners, and studies showed that those are the students that had a lower rate of high school completion. So we developed a program a number of years ago with some grant funding from the federal government to create a program, an after-school program, where those students would receive English language instruction, but also integration within the community. So there's trips and tours around the city to introduce the students to their community, to get to know their families, and the graduation success rate of the cohort of students that are in these programs is absolutely incredible. Many of them going on to be valedictorians, salutatorians, essayists in their high school graduations classes, and going on to careers or secondary education. I already spoke about the Digital Library Lab, but just a reminder of the kind of work that we do here, and we work with the Town and City Clerk's Office here at the city, as well as with Development Services, to do work on behalf of the city. And this is also a service that we offer to other communities and municipalities, and it is intended to be revenue generating for us, and it's a wonderful resource, and anybody's interested, happy to give you a tour. And now I'll talk about the question that is probably forefront of most people's minds, and first question I usually get when I run into people is, what's going on with the downtown library? We are moving along. It has taken longer than we had anticipated. We spent almost the full first year after the flood navigating the remediation, as far as just making sure we got all of the affected material out, the wet tiles, the ceilings, the drywall, the wiring, the elevator had to come out. So dealing with getting everything out that needed to come out, and then navigating through the insurance claim process. It just took a lot of time. We were also simultaneously, as David mentioned, rethinking, okay, this is an opportunity for us to say what wasn't working well and how can we adjust that. We did a number of community interviews and focus groups and learned from the community that what they were really looking for was some quiet space, some more event space, some additional classrooms, and to streamline the wayfinding to make it easier to navigate that big building. So we are moving along, and we will be having a portion of the first floor library reopened this fall. But there is still activity over there. We are using the classrooms, we're using the CCC. Today marks the first day that we offered patio service on the front patio. We've got that on the Wednesdays and Fridays of each, Mondays and Wednesdays, or Wednesdays and Fridays? Wednesdays and, thank you, Wednesdays and Fridays, where we've got staff out front giving away books, doing library cards, answering questions, so that we've got a level of service out there for the community. And we also launched Story Stash, and this came about directly because of support from the City Council. We launched this. It is a remote hold pickup unit that is in the parking lot, which you probably pass when you come in the morning or go home at night. And people are using that. You can reserve a book online and then stop by and just pick it up. It's like an Amazon locker. It's been a wonderful resource. But now we'll give you a little sense of what it's looking like inside the library. And again, if this is something that you would like to see firsthand, please let me know. Happy to give you a hard hat tour. On the left, you can see literally there are so many spaces that had to come down to the studs because the water damage was so extensive. The stairs were completely gutted, and they are not rebuilding the infrastructure, but essentially rebuilding all of the components of the stairs. But it's coming. They are starting, and it is moving along. So there is new drywall in the perimeter of the atrium, which is nice to see, and the stairwell is coming along. The next slide's a little hard to see, but I just wanted to give you a kind of a sense of the scale, because often when people say, well, it shouldn't take that long. Well, it's a big building. There's over 100,000 square feet that are being touched by this or impacted by this project. So this is a floor plan schematic of the new layout for the downtown library, which includes a new space for the American Place. So basically, instead of having elements of the American Place service on different floors, they're being all located on one floor. HPL Studios is having its own space. I think one of the really exciting opportunities for us with HPL Studios is the chance to partner more closely with HPA-TV. And we are in conversations about having them co-locate with us at the library, and we're really excited about that opportunity. We share so much of a mission to share information and access to our community, so we're really happy to be working with them. And reimagining the first floor to better serve the needs of the community as far as access to collections, computers, and resources. So the next one, we are keeping the snake. I'm happy to say that did survive, but this is our community living room concept. So we will have this area on the first floor that is very welcoming and bright and cheery. We'll move through the next ones, the concepts. Top left is the American Place. On the right, this is a new event space that'll be on the first floor. There's a huge demand for the Center for Contemporary Culture. So by adding this new event space, we'll be able to accommodate more community groups, performers, activities at the downtown library. We envision that when we reopen, it'll be, programmed every day. There will be things in that library going on all the time for our community. This is also shared space with, or we'll co-program this with UConn to make sure that the students have an opportunity to engage more with the community, which was the idea behind the collaboration with UConn at our downtown campus. Bottom left is the reimagined and redesigned Hartford History Center. And the next one is a view of one of the studios for HPL Studios, and those are examples of classes that are currently going on and will continue to expand. But not only do we have the downtown project going on, we are actively doing 2 capital projects in our community for our branches. As you know, we built the Park Street Library, but we didn't want to stop there. In our capital plan, the next highest priority after we completed Park Street was a new library for Barber Street. This is the concept for our new Barber Street Library. So we're moving forward with that. We are essentially funded there, depending on where the estimates come back. I don't want to say we're all clear, because I would imagine as all construction quotes come back, there will potentially be a gap, but we have received funding for this and are moving this forward. We're currently in design development. We're really excited about this project. And we're also actively in schematic design for the Albany Library, and so the Albany Task Force and the Albany NRZ will be seeing a presentation within the next couple of weeks as far as what's envisioned for the Albany Library, which is a renovation and expansion, and the expansion includes a renovation and connection to the former Northwest Jones School. So we're pretty excited about that. And so now, this is the budget request for the library for fiscal year 25. The request that we have submitted reflects a 3.4% increase over our current City of Hartford funding for fiscal year 24. And that where those increases come are salaries. Typically what we come to the city with is a request to cover the contractual increases for our union represented staff, as well as cost of living across the organization. Fringe benefits, we track those with the city. We work very closely with the city, and in fact our employees are able to participate in the benefits that the city offers, which is an incredible service to us, so we're very, very thankful and appreciative of that. And the non-salary expenses that are included in there generally are collections, and the increases for book costs, DVDs, databases, and all of the collections that we make available through the libraries, branch libraries in the downtown library. And when we look at the City of Hartford funding, we look to say, what it goes to support, and the vast amount, 76% of the funding that we receive from the city goes to direct public service. That is where, it's mostly staff, right, that this allocation funds, and most of that, of our employee base is public service and direct public service. And then I just did some comparisons because we have great statistics available through the state library. So when you look at the Hartford Public Library, one of the places that we always excel when we compare ourselves to our peer libraries is in programming. Clearly, programming is the thing that our community appreciates and uses. Not that people don't use collections or books or materials, but our program attendance has been consistently, since I've started here, off the charts when it comes, compared to our other peer institutions in the urban centers in Connecticut. And I just wanted to give some longitudinal studies as well over time as far as where Hartford sits across the state as well as within a peer group that serves. So as you can see, Hartford tracks, we are the orange line in this, so Hartford tracks at least average and in many cases above average when it comes to hours open in a typical week. And this is even considering half of the most current year reflects not only the closing of the downtown library, but of course with the 2021 the impact of the pandemic. But not only are we coming back, but we have not lost any space when it comes to the relationship with our peers and how we show in our peer group for per library visits per capita, the number of residents with library cards. This is also a huge testament to our partnership with the Hartford Public Schools, in that every Hartford Public School student automatically has a public library card, and that is that doesn't happen everywhere. So kudos to Hartford and Hartford Public Schools and the library for making that happen. It's a wonderful service for our students. And then program attendance and views for young people as well. And then I just leave you with a quote from Toni Morrison. So, thank you very much for your support, and David and I are here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn, for this presentation and for all the pictures and all the stuff that brings the visual to us, for us to understand better, the programming of the library. I'm going to open up the floor for my colleagues to ask any questions or make any statements. I'll look here to my left. Let's start with Josh Mixon. Councilman Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks to the team for that presentation. The Barber Branch, what's the timeline on that? You said it's mostly fully funded, but when can we expect that beautiful building actually to exist?
So we are hopeful to be able to do a groundbreaking this summer. That is our plan. Right now, the architects are working on finalizing the design documents so that we can get to a place where it can go out to bid. The challenge that they're having is with the site, figuring out the site engineering. So the last time they did test borings, the soil samples came back that there was 100 feet of clay on that site. So they had to come back and do it over to get down, to find where, the absolute footing to finalize the engineering for the site. So it's details like that that the architectural team are working through. And once that's done, and we anticipate that within the next few weeks or month, and in fact, we have a meeting next week to come up to speed on where we are with all of that work. But the goal is to break ground this summer, start work as soon as possible after that. I mean, of course, it has to go out to bid, and we have to go through the whole, appropriate procurement process. But it's absolutely feasible if we keep on our timeline that we can start construction this year.
Cool, thank you. My other question is about hours at the branches, weekends and extended hours. I mean, this is the thing I've talked to you about before. Yep. I assume it's mostly a question of money, but are there any plans for expansion in that regard?
The last year, the mayor and the council approved an additional allocation for the library to continue our expanded hours and days of service at the branches, even when the downtown library opens. So we will be able to maintain additional hours or longer hours and days of service on our branch locations. We're currently trying to navigate how we're going to manage or what the staffing is going to look like at the downtown library when we open a portion in the fall, which means that we'll still have capacity in the branch location. So we haven't figured out exactly what those schedules look like, but we know that weekend hours at the branches are very popular, and we want to be able to maintain that. We are also looking to reintroduce evening hours. Right now we close at 6 in all of our locations, and we know people would like us to be open later. So we'll be introducing one evening at each library location until 8 each week. So that will be coming probably this fall.
Thank you. I want to make sure I understood you. You think that you'll be able to keep the weekend hours you have now when the downtown branch reopens? That's the goal, is just to keep those.
We may not be able to keep all of them. We have to definitely look. So we have Sundays right now at the Park Street Library. I don't think we'll be able to keep Sundays in more than one location, but we'll definitely explore it.
What would it cost?
That is a good question.
Ballpark.
I would have to go back and figure that out, but I'd be happy to get you that information.
And I would love to know what that would cost,
Okay.
and also what the 1 night a week per branch costs, and
Okay.
what would it cost to have more.
Okay.
But those
Yes.
are all the questions I have for now.
Okay. Thank you. Happy to put that together for you.
Councilman Gale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you and good evening. Always fun to see
Yeah.
the Hartford Public Library here. Looking at your total budget, I see that you've got other funds that are coming in that in the upcoming budget, you're anticipating $500,000 more of income from your other funds. So I'm wondering, and it actually looks like, you know, we're seeing back to 2023 where you were at 3.9 million, then it went down to 3.5. So I'm just kind of wondering what happened that caused it to go down, what happens to cause your other funding to come back up, and if you could just kind of
Sure.
give us a little breakdown of the sources of the other funding. I assume there's some endowment and some grants in there.
Yes. Yes. So the city provides about 70 to 75% of our operating revenue every year. The other 30 to 25 to 30% comes from a combination of income off our endowment. We draw 4% off a rolling 12-month average of income off the endowment. We also have a robust grant and development operation. And then we do have revenue that comes from other things like passports or the Digital Library Lab or other kind of revenue generating services that we provide, copy machines, faxing, that kind of thing. Not huge, but you know, everything helps. The fluctuations that you see are usually because of the fluctuations in grant funding. And I'm sure, as you know, when grant funding comes in, it's essentially to support the operations. It's rarely completely unrestricted, that if we get grant operations to support those activities, then you're going to see the revenue, but also the commensurate expense that comes in. So the fluctuations in the revenue from those grant lines have a corresponding fluctuation in the expense as well. But that without delving too deep, I mean, I would have to go back and see what those exact numbers look like and where that came from, but generally that's where you see the fluctuation in the numbers.
Thank you, appreciate that. You probably don't have it here, so I'm not going to ask for it tonight, but if you could get to us, I would like to see a percentage breakdown of the other funding as
Sure.
to, you know, how much comes from your endowment, how much is from other grants, and
Yep.
how much is from your income stream.
I'm sorry, from,
Your income stream
Oh,
from
yeah.
passports
Okay.
and things like that.
Yep.
And along those lines, you've probably already gone down this road, but you know, talking about like your passport services, I just got myself the TSA pre-check, which in theory is supposed to help you get through the airport a little faster. I may not have to take my shoes off anymore, or my belt, I'm not sure. I'll let you know how that works out. But to get that TSA pre-check, I had to go to Staples and pay them $78. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the library could do the same thing and you could pocket the $78. I'd certainly much rather have given the money to you than to Staples. So
Okay,
for whatever that's worth.
that is a very good suggestion. Thank you. Yeah.
Last very modest question. The West Middle branch, is that open to the public? And if so, what hours is that open to the public?
So it is not currently open to the public as far as, like we do at Rawson. We've got, a couple days a week where we are open to the public at the Rawson School after school. We have not got there yet with West Middle. We are thinking about that. However, what's unique about West Middle is it has that second floor. So the first floor is the collection space, the children's space that we're using as, really to support the school. And also after school programs that are being held at that location. We do a lot of work with them after school. And then the upstairs is being programmed by the American Place. So we have the public coming in, but it's not an open branch in the way that our other branches are. However, the programs that are pre-registered, we are having the public that come in, but it's essentially a program-based operational model right now, not a true branch operational model.
And you do know that the roof of West Middle School is a soccer field.
I know, it's super cool.
So if you could someday figure out how to program that and get the public in there,
Okay.
because I suspect that that's very underutilized.
Well, we can have a conversation with the principal, who's fabulous, by the way.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Councilwoman Bilodeau.
Thank you for your presentation. Just want to congratulate you on your 250th anniversary. I was able to partake in one of your events, which was very nice, and it was nice to see the community there and celebrating and very happy. So I don't really have any questions. If you could just share at some point with us the usage at the individual libraries, if you have that, and the different services and programs offered at those libraries. Just so we have a better understanding what's available in the different neighborhoods. That would be great. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Be very happy to. As I said, that when I look at the statistics of how many people are using the branches now, we're just blown away with the activity in the branch location. So very happy to share that with you.
So two quick questions. One, it's the library storage stash. I know we have it, in the parking area in the garage. Are there any of those in anywhere else, in any other branch?
No, there aren't. We had explored having one in a location that was more of a retail location, because we thought it'd be really interesting to have it at a non-library location. But you do need power, you do need data. There were some site issues. So when the library closed, we were all having those conversations before the flood, and after the flood, we thought, what, we're just going to put it here because it's, we need the service here. But we would love to explore other locations for those book lockers. There's also vending machines where you don't just, have it as a pickup, reserve it online and have it as a pickup. It's actually, it vends an item to you right there. You can look at it and say, I want that book, and hit it and grab it and go. So there are some other really wonderful examples of technology that can be used to expand access to collections for people in different areas of the city. We just haven't had the opportunity to look any more closely at those, but certainly open to thinking about that. That's actually in our capital plan too, is expanding the number of kind of remote operations for vending and pickup locations in different areas of the city.
Thank you. Is the former Goodwin branch, is that building still under your purview? Is that building? What are the plans with that particular location?
So the Goodwin location is actually, it's one of the buildings that's owned by the Library Association. As you probably know, most of the libraries except for Goodwin and Campfield are owned by the city, and we lease those from you with an operational agreement that, gives us the authority to operate the entities, operate those facilities on the behalf of the city for library services. But the Goodman Library is actually owned by the Library Association. We are currently using it as swing space for staff that's been displaced out of the downtown library. So it is serving as essentially office space right now. However, we're in conversations with the community because we understand that the NRZ would like to use it as a meeting space, maybe use the parking lot. So we're happy to accommodate that. Think that isn't going to be a problem at all. And I think we have a meeting next week with the head of the NRZ to move that forward. After downtown reopens, we have a couple ideas, but we have nothing solid as far as what those plans will be. So we're kind of got a lot of ideas brewing for that. We don't, I don't know, I can't really speak for the board. I mean, the relationship that we had with Free Center was intended to create an opportunity for another nonprofit to use that space and also provide back some community support. So that's one option. We have other library-related programming and operations that might be well suited to that space. But, as I said, we're open to ideas for what that would look like post the library using it as swing space.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from my colleagues? You good, Councilman Gill? All right. So with no more questions, we're going to end this presentation at this point. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for all the information you provided us. If any other questions arise, we will make sure to email you those questions at a later time. At this point, we're going to take a 5-minute break to transition to our next department. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. At this point, we are going to have our department budget hearing for Hartford Parking Authority with its CEO, Jill Turlo. Jill Turlo, the floor is yours. Please introduce the leadership alongside you, and then you can start your presentation.
Great. Thank you so much for having us here today. With me, I have our finance manager, John Mihalik, and then I have our new director of operations, Shandia Drummond-Butt, attending with me. All right, so I will dive right into our presentation. I will say after seeing the library, I think they had a lot of beautiful audio-visual, and I definitely see some room for improvement for fiscal year 2026. We will work on that next year. So to start for, yeah, they did beautifully. That was excellent. Okay, so to start with our mission statement, the HPA exists to meet the needs of its customers citywide by providing clean, safe, accessible parking on and off streets. We're responsible for creating and maintaining and operating dedicated parking facilities. That includes the Sheldon Street lot, the Matt Garage, and the Hartford Public Library parking deck. We're also responsible for meter collections, enforcement, and parking citation management throughout the city. That's approximately 1,800 metered spaces. I included our organizational chart here just to get a sense of our operations. We are a relatively small organization for the amount of work that we do. We do work with Republic Parking on the enforcement side, which is not included here, and we are overseen by a currently 4-person board of commissioners. So, some of our highlights over the last year is we had received requests from the Asylum Hill NRZ for assistance. Pursuant to their request, we ended up expanding the RPP in that area. We installed parking meters on Atwood Street to combat usage of those spaces. They were essentially constantly being utilized by people that were working nearby, and that therefore they weren't available. They were just no rotation being used all day. We also added space markings to prevent driveway encroachment. That was a really significant problem in Asylum Hill, and we've received really positive feedback that it's less of a problem now that we've added in those markings and continue to enforce. One of the other major things that happened over the last year, which will be noted further in here as we're actually looking at some of the numbers, is we did lose the Dono lot. I know there had been some legal entanglements that had been pending for quite some time, and those were resolved late last year. So we had to do quite a lot of work to move our primary event operations from that lot to a number of other locations, including the San Juan parking lot, the High Street lot, the small Ann Uccello lot, and to the 275 Windsor Street location, which is currently being leased by RMS companies. We have continued refreshing damaged, fading, and missing parking signage and space markings throughout the city in concert with DPW. And to follow up on that, we are partnering with DPW Traffic and the Department of Development Services to review a variety of parking concerns. We have honestly a really excellent team that goes out anytime we get parking requests or different issues to look at the area and to try to look at options to improve the situation for people given the tools in our arsenal. And I think that collaboration is very important to the HPA and part of our ongoing success in making some of these changes around the city. We have installed some, and we are continuing to install some more parking meters on Albany Avenue. The same issue there, there's a lot of congestion, the spaces don't get turned over, so these parking meters are going to help those businesses retain parking for their customers. People will have to leave those spots and turn over to help those businesses get people in and out. And finally, we have navigated a change in executive leadership, which is just me taking this position. So right now, we have a number of strategic initiatives. One of our biggest projects is the replacement of sanitation's operations signage, which is primarily a DPW project, but the HPA is assisting with it significantly. We bought our own pole installing machine, and we have our staff going out there to help with this project under the guidelines provided by DPW. As part of that project, we've also been working on removing odd-even parking anywhere that we are able to and changing it to one side only and making that decision based on the existing infrastructure on the street and where we can get the most available parking spaces for the residents in the area. We're also working on rolling out a second mobile parking payment application. Our current application is by the company Passport. It's called Woonerf. Our new app is going to be by a company called Flowbird, and it will be entitled Park Hartford, which I think is very intuitive and will be easier for people to search. We are continuing to partner with the NRZs to develop parking solutions all around the city. So we spend a lot of effort on community outreach. We have staff that likes to go to the NRZ meetings and merchants associations and essentially solicit feedback. If people have concerns or questions, one of the big things that I am trying to really push for my organization is community outreach and engagement, making sure that we're being responsive to people's concerns as much as we can. We are also working, and this should be done in the next few weeks, but we had ordered 30 new Strata S5 parking meters, which are all going to be replaced in about the next week or week and a half. So you'll be seeing those throughout the city. If you're curious, I can give you a location to check out if you'd like to see the new meters. And then finally listed here is we are creating a new position internally called Event and Facility Patrol. They're going to provide a presence at events where there's cash handling, help with traffic calming, and do patrols of our facilities just to check for any issues. They'll also be in charge of opening and closing facilities as needed. So the next page is just a general budget comparison. So we do have a decrease to the net income that we're anticipating at about $281,000. Primarily that's due to the loss of the Dono lot. At this point, I think it's very difficult for us to predict which events are going to be wanting to utilize the HPA's existing lots. This has occurred in the last couple of months now, and we are still getting some events at our lots, but some events are choosing to park at private entities instead. So that number is going to be a little unpredictable this year. We're going to have to see how trends continue to perform. We did make an update as well to our cash handling. My predecessor was very fond of cash only at events, so we actually have added mobile payment processing for our events, which particularly since Duncan Park is a cash-free venue, I think is a very intuitive decision for the HPA and can move us forward a little bit better and provide a little less frustration for people attending our events. So on the next page, we have community engagement. The first note is that we do provide free parking for Hartford-based events that benefit the community. That's both at Duncan Park and on street. In the next month or two, off the top of my head, we're providing parking for the Walk for Hearing, the Walk for Hunger, the Best Buddies Walk. We also regularly will provide free parking on street or at our lots for Red Cross blood drives, and I know City Mobile Mammography. They'll reach out to us and we help with parking for those events. I had mentioned already, but we do participate regularly in meetings with the NRZs and the merchants associations, and I want to make sure we continue that moving forward and honestly increase that as much as I can. I think that's a big part of us doing our job well, is being able to be responsive to the community and seeing what each of these neighborhoods needs and how we can make improvements. And then the final note here is we recently upgraded the HPA website to include a Contact Us page. Obviously, I'm not going to name names, but we had a resident who was having consistent problems with her driveway being obstructed. Her mother had to attend dialysis appointments, and I would get messages personally on our Facebook account that I monitor, asking for help at all sorts of times, and sometimes I would see it promptly and sometimes I didn't, and we needed a more efficient way to be able to get those requests not just to me, but to our enforcement people. So we created this new page, and it has a number of different options. If you select Request Parking Enforcement, it goes directly to the general manager and supervisor for parking enforcement, so they can get staff out promptly and be responsive to those requests. So that's something that I think is a very positive addition. You can also do things like request parking reservations or ask questions, but the primary imperative for that was being able to help people that are having parking issues after standard business hours. And then finally, we have our staff composition. The only thing I'm really going to note here that I think is particularly important is that I have been making sure when we post things that we are really encouraging Hartford residents to apply. I believe last year our residency rate was 0% for HPA employees, and we are now at a 23.1% for employees that live in the city of Hartford, including my director of operations here. So that is what I have for you today. I know it is much more brief than the last presentation, but I am happy to answer any questions you may have, and again, appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this presentation. And don't feel bad. There's been presentation just as short, so
Okay.
we won't be unique.
Thank you.
You know, it's being after the library is a hard, it's a difficult
I know, that was,
task to do.
all the
so,
audio-visual was excellent.
So we're going to open up the floor for my colleagues to ask any questions or make any statements. I'm going to start with my left with Councilman Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Turlo and team. I have some questions.
Sure.
First, about how enforcement happens, and I'll explain what I mean in this. There are various places around the city that I see where there's just routine violation of parking regulations. One is for near my house on Park Street, the C-Town, people double park in front of the C-Town, even when the lot is empty behind the C-Town. And it's already a narrow street, and it's, it becomes kind of dangerous. That's one. Or the bike lanes, right? For example, on New Park, across from Tasties, I think you could go there any time of day or night and find cars just parked with no one in the bike lane. Same thing, the Weathersfield Ave bike lane where it's supposed to be bumped out. People just don't get it. They park any which way. How does enforcement, is there a patrol? Because I feel like literally you could go by there any old time and lay a ticket on some of those cars. So like, how does that work?
So again, when I took over, sort of most enforcement, I think, was centered around certain existing infrastructures, meters, residential parking program areas, things like that. Something I've really been trying to push with my staff is actually trying to expand where we are enforcing, essentially. I'm working with our staff to try to increase some of our hiring, and I've discussed what I'm referring to as a roving residential unit that is essentially going out to areas that don't have meters and are looking to see those issues that I think really affect residents. People's driveways being blocked, people who have designated handicap that can't park in those places, people parked at, next to intersections or next to stop signs that cause safety problems. So that's something I'm actually working with the team right now to try to have someone who, rather than just doing these, consistent places where the infrastructure exists, is getting them out and actually reviewing all of the city with more regularity. Because I think there are places that we are not visiting often enough that need our help. We do have, obviously, limitations of just staff size, but I'm aware that the problems exist outside of just, these downtown areas or near the courthouses or the hospitals, and we need to be out there with those. I think the safety violations are honestly the most important thing we enforce, and those are the issues you see in the residential areas. So I feel very strongly about that.
Related question, is
Sure.
When cars just park all the way on the sidewalk, is that still your domain, or is that the police?
If they are on the sidewalk, then we can ticket them. If they are beyond the sidewalk on private property, then we don't have any ability to go enforce for that. So that would, I think, need to be HPD or perhaps zoning.
Gotcha. Related enforcement, you were talking about the Contact Us link. Is there like a tie-in with 311 or dispatch or the other ways that people tend to call the city where they can route those things to you?
Well, we do respond to 311. I know there had recently been a change to the structure of it. The previous version of 311 was actually really helpful for enforcement because we would get a notification when someone put in a request, and I would get that email and I could send enforcement out. The new version, you have to actually go and check it and refresh it. So in terms of most of the complaints that residents are submitting, the newer version of 311 doesn't really help us respond to things promptly. So we are still using 311. As often as I can, when I am responding to those tickets, I'm actually telling people, here's my direct phone number, here's my email address, here's the Contact Us page. Please reach out to me because I can't respond promptly if I don't get until I check on a daily basis. We don't have anything with dispatch, but I would be happy to put something like that in place so we can be more responsive.
This doesn't really concern you specifically, but I'm just curious, as a person who has to go around the state for work. Seems like every town has their own parking app. So my phone is full of apps, and then the towns change their apps. Is there any effort? Do the towns talk to each other and be like, let's all get on the Wooner for the, can we all line up? Is anyone trying to do that or no?
I'm actually currently in talks with West Hartford's Brooke Nelson. They're very interested in also being part of the Park Hartford app. So we've been talking through that possibility and what that would entail, but the idea was that a lot of people that frequent both of these cities travel between them, and that would be really useful for the area. And the idea would be to have both of these apps existing concurrently. It seems like it's a trend a lot of cities are doing. It gives people the option that if you do have just the one app, and just for your reference, the WooNerf app is the specifically branded Hartford app, but you can actually use those zones on the generic Passport app as well. You just have to make sure you put in the correct zone for Hartford. But the idea would be to really cut down on, let's say if you're in West Hartford and you want to use Flowbird, you'd be able to use that here. So.
Cool. And then my last question is probably the least pressing, but a thing that I talked with your predecessor a little bit about, and I've talked with other folks about, is there a way to know, since we have to put in our plates to park in the meters, to track how much of the use of the meters is by our city residents, cars garaged in the city, because I know we have that, and how much isn't?
I can't think of any way to do that unless the DMV wanted to share address data. Well, there might be a way to pull the information where we're able to get accurate DMV imports.
Well, because we know the cars that are garaged in the city because people pay tax on them. So we have those plate numbers, right?
That might be something I could pull. I would have to play with our database and see what data I could pull, but there might be a way to figure that out, at least for the vehicles where the DMV is able to successfully import data. I could play with that.
I just have a dream that we could charge out-of-towners more for parking. So I'm thinking about the logistics.
That's a very
So,
intriguing dream.
for the future.
Okay.
But that's all. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Councilman Gill.
Yes, thank you. Kind of picking up on that app question that was asked. When you add an app to our capability, is there an expense to the city for, are you paying a licensing fee to these apps or anything like that?
There is no expense whatsoever. Flowbird is very eager to get into Hartford. They are not charging us anything. They are supplying new signage that will advertise both of the apps. They are doing all of the work to program it. The only cost that they will be benefiting from, essentially, is they will be giving the same fee per transaction that the current app has. That is the only way they make their revenue. So I believe that the new app that we are onboarding seems to feel confident that they will be able to provide a good solution for Hartford and that people will choose to use their service. They are also actually offering a pay-by-phone system, which is helpful for visitors. If you don't want to download the app and you're just coming to Hartford for a day, you'll be able to essentially text a certain phone number, and you can then make the payment through that process rather than having to download the app in its entirety. Sorry for not mentioning that earlier.
So when I use the app, you know, I put in, I want to park for an hour or so, a part of the charge that I'm paying is going to the app provider?
That's correct. So when you process the payment on the first page where it actually gives you the rates that you're paying, it'll say, let's say, $2.10 for an hour if you're in downtown. You'll get that payment. It'll bring you to the next page where you're having the confirmation, and it'll then list the base price for parking, the, I believe, 20-cent fee per transaction, and it'll give you the total, and then at that point you can authorize it. And that is, again, the fee that goes to the provider.
So like Councilman Mictum, my phone is also loaded with parking apps between Passport and Parkmobile and WooNerf, and I know there's 2 or 3 others, and apparently now Flowbird. Are they all charging relatively similar fees?
Yep, the 2 apps that we were onboarding are charging the same fee. I had to push back on that with Flowbird, but essentially I told them I was not going to add a second app that was going to increase costs, and they were willing to accommodate that.
So, just throw this idea out for you. I don't, I mean, maybe it's already been considered, or maybe it's in the works, but it does strike me that the Capital Region Council of Governments could play a role here, since part of their mission is to plan, especially do some transportation planning, and parking sort of plays into transportation, but their mission is, if I'm not mistaken, includes a lot of transportation planning for the 38 towns that make up the capital region. And to Councilman Mictum's suggestion, perhaps they could be very useful in getting one provider or one universal app, if you will, with the and negotiating the best fee for everybody, because they'd be negotiating for 38 towns. So I just throw it out there for you. I don't know. Do you have a relationship with CROG at all?
I don't currently, but if you have a contact, I would be happy to start that conversation.
Well,
I
sure.
think that would be neat.
The director of CROG is named Matthew Hart, H-A-R-T, and CROG is located right down the street on Main Street, so, you know, several blocks from you. They're all the way down by Ashley's, if you know where Ashley's is, down the south end of Main Street. I don't know if they're 221 Main Street, but they're down there, and you know, they are also a state authority, Council of Governments, so they get their authority from the state of Connecticut. it'd be worth a conversation. Matt, I'm sure, would be open to, and would love to chat with you anytime, so.
I think that's a great
Something
idea.
to consider.
Thank you.
While you're talking to Matt, I'll throw another idea out there for you. Your empowering statute is 7-204 in the general statutes. And that, when the legislature created the parking authorities, they were very specific in saying what a parking authority could do. So all the things that you can do are listed in 7204. I think there's 8 things that are listed there that it says a parking authority could do. My experience as a council member over the years is that our Hartford Parking Authority is a pretty darn efficient group. And you know, when charged with a task, you seem to do it reasonably well and efficiently. So I thought, why not expand the authority of the parking authority and see if there were other city services that we could utilize the parking authority to assist with. In order to do so, however, that empowering statute needs to be amended. So I just throw it out there for you to have on your radar. You may want to casually mention or very officially mention to both administration, CROG, your council, our Hartford legislative delegation, that might be worthwhile to look at the empowering statute. I actually did suggest this to Speaker Ritter, who is a Hartford state representative, and he did initiate the process last year of expanding the authority. The suggestion I made was to expand it to say, and such other duties as a municipality may provide. That was very expansive. They may not want to go for something quite so expansive. Representative Ritter told me there was a little pushback. Suffice it to say, nothing's happened. I know they've been busy with lots of other things. But just to give you a quick example, one of the things that we had thought about, Hartford has issues with zoning enforcement on some very quality of life type things. From time to time, and I'm sure other council members have heard these complaints, people will call up and complain, you know, these people are parking in their front yard. They're parking on their grass. They're not supposed to park a car on their grass in their front yard. That's a zoning violation. It's the kind of thing that could be just a simple ticket. But we don't have within the, in fact, when licenses and inspections was here, the biggest complaint there was they're lacking manpower. They have vacancies, all sorts of vacancies in that department that they've had very tremendous difficulty filling. But here we have the Hartford Parking Authority with, I don't want to say little minions, but you've got, you know, lots of people driving around the city all day long in a position to see all sorts of quality of life, potential quality of life. Anyway, throwing it out there for you.
I think that would be great. We do get people calling us occasionally about someone parked on, you know, a lawn, and we have to unfortunately tell them that that's not something we can handle. We actually also did have requests from some of the city's parks wanting help with people parking on their property, but we're not currently able to do that either. So that's something where they had requested assistance that we weren't able to provide. I would be very happy to help them if we were able to do so.
Well, and you could do so if your authority was expanded. And at least I would certainly tell you there's one council member here who would be happy to work on this side, 2 council members, and maybe others would be happy to work on this side to help you get some additional enforcement authority.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
You don't really give us much in the way of your total budget and your total expenses, but I do see that they are in our budget book.
I used the template from last year, and again, watching the library, I was like, I could have been a little bit more thorough with what we were sharing here. We'll be more robust in the future.
I would appreciate it if next year, in your presentation, you would show what your total budget is, and show us what your total expenses are. As I said, we get this big budget book, and your total expenses are in here, and your I mean, they're in here, but they're not summed up for us, and I'm kind of just looking at them kind of quickly, but it does not look like there's a dramatic difference in the expenses of the organization year over year. Do you have in mind, is it gone up, gone down?
I expect it to go down a little bit. We did make the transition to the internal patrol, and that's going to be saving the HPA some money this year.
So year over year, your expectation is that your expenses are actually going to go down a slight bit.
That is my hope, yes. Unless for some reason we have an opportunity to expand in some way, like needing to purchase meters or something like that. But yes, my expectation is our expenses would go down a bit.
I'm not, we're never sure how much of the public is watching this, but I don't want it to go unnoticed that the Hartford Parking Authority generates income for the city of Hartford. So when you tell us that we're going to get $2.28 million, that's after all of your expenses are paid. The city of Hartford's going to be a net beneficiary of $2.28 million.
You know, I occasionally tell irate people that have citations that, and sometimes it calms them down.
Last comment for you. I live in the west end of Hartford, and like the Asylum Hill people who complained about Atwood Street, I get nonstop complaints from constituents about Warrenton Avenue. And I had conversations with your predecessor, Mingo, about doing apparently exactly what you did on Atwood Street. The particular issue there is it's a narrow street, it's a tight street, and people park so close to people's driveways that residents were having a difficult time turning into their own driveway. And I remember we had a discussion about, I think it's, sort of painting the curb to delineate a point past which you're not supposed to park, past which the Hartford Park Authority can give you a ticket for parking. And I take it that's about what you did over in the Atwood Street area.
Yeah, they put in sort of like the triangular striped buffers on either side of the driveway, and then they actually striped out the parking spaces, just because if you actually have the spaces designated and separated, people tend to utilize the space more effectively, so you can get more cars in there. We could definitely do that on Warrenton if there's an issue. I think it would help.
The particular block, so you have it in mind, I mean, Warrenton's many blocks long. The particular block that seems to be problematic is from it's a very small, it's Evergreen Avenue to Sisson Avenue. Very highly trafficked block, but it's got a bunch of, residents that live there with a bunch of driveways. So certainly they would appreciate it, and if they don't call me anymore, I would appreciate it.
That is very doable. I'll have a site visit soon.
Thank you very much. I have
Thank
no
you.
more questions, Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Bilodeau.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you to you and your staff. Just have a question on the sanitation day enforcements. When do they start? When do they end?
When does enforcement start?
Yes.
So the agreement that we had made with, I believe, Mingo had presented this to City Council previously. I know he'd spoken with the mayor's office and with DPW, is that we're moving by days of the week. So right now we are working on Wednesday. It's the first day we've started this process. Once all the signage is updated on Wednesday, DPW and HPA are going to be doing a full review together. We're going to drive through the streets, make sure all the signage is still in place, that it's accurate, just make sure nothing has been damaged or removed in the meantime. Once that's done, we're going to start with a 2-week warning period. So we have little warning cards that we are going to be putting on people's vehicles. And actually, pursuant to a request from the City Council, all of our warnings are now bilingual. So we've started that process, which is great. And one warning card will say, in 2 weeks, we'll be issuing citations. It explains, sanitation operations timing, and it has a little QR code to bring you right to the City of Hartford website. And on there, you can also put in your address, you can confirm your sanitation day, and you can find any safe parking zones near where you live. And then at the end of that 2 weeks, we would start issuing real citations, which I think will be a very busy week at the HPA.
I just asked because my street has been heavily targeted in the past, and other streets have not in the same area. So it causes confusion, right? When one street is getting ticketed a lot and other streets are not. And, other folks are asking why. We have a lot of single car driveways. So folks are seeing everybody park up on the sidewalks and everything, so it's just really effective when it's done proportionately. So that's why I asked about that. So thank you very much. And on the pie chart here, the enforcement includes the fees collected for on-street parking.
I believe
that-
so. We didn't actually make the pie chart, but I think that is the implication of it.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So let me make a couple of statements. First of all, thank you for, I think it was a couple of months ago, actually a month ago, that the Roberto Clemente and Vera Clemente award ceremony was done in Duncan Park, and you were very accommodating, with the Dono parking lot already kind of like in construction, to provide the parking lot on Windsor Street, free of charge for that event. I'm not sure how many people ended up using it. I got there so early that I was able to park, closer, and then I didn't see anybody. But you were accommodating in providing that access free of charge for the community. So I appreciate that. And also because in the last few months, we've had several conversations over different, concerns that our constituents have brought to our attention, and you'll be very, very open to have the conversation with us. And so I appreciate that line of communication being there. It's important that if we ever have to reach out, that we find times to have those conversations. So I appreciate that very much. So thank you. One question. So actually, two questions. So when we're talking about this app, there is no possibility that these apps can be developed and owned by parking authority to avoid these fees that folks are paying every single time on transactions?
I'm not saying we couldn't, but I think that would take a tremendous amount of development to do well and correctly. I don't even know what it would entail for us to develop something like that independently. There are only a few really big players in it, and I think they spend a lot of money on development and maintaining it and keeping it up. And I mean, we have external IT right now. So I think that would be a very large and expensive undertaking to try to do something at the same level of quality as the existing apps. And I would hate to do something at a lesser level of quality and then have people, causing problems or payments not going through it. I don't think that would be beneficial.
Sure, that makes sense. So when I looked at this page 31-2 on the budget book, I see that there are some particular locations that it seems like historically they run at a loss, as far as revenue versus operating expenses, and that may be the nature of what it is. And I just wonder if the mission or the vision for the parking authorities to ever be able to balance those particular locations, not to create deficits on those locations, and then only depend on citations or parking revenue to at least break even or produce revenue for the city.
I mean, we definitely make revenue from the other streams, but citation revenue is by far the highest. I think by nature of what we're trying to do, which is enforce safe parking, having that financial penalty. I mean, as I'm sure you can all see, we're doing warnings now for sanitation, and the warnings don't have much of an impact other than mostly annoying people. I think sort of that financial penalty is part of what makes what we're doing effective and allows us to actually change behavior, ideally, at least in small instances with people. We are definitely increasing revenue at the Mac Garage. I know that our meter revenue is increased, but I don't think we're ever going to be able to compete with the citation revenue comparatively.
Perfect, thank you. Do any of my colleagues have any other questions? Councilman Mitchell.
Just concerning those warning cards, something that occurred to me, I'm glad they're bilingual, but it would be good if the QR code, wherever that landed, people had more languages, right? Because like a lot of my neighbors speak Portuguese and Portuguese only. They could probably make out what the Spanish means, but there's other parts of the city where, folks speak Mandarin and the Spanish won't help them. So if the QR code, wherever that lands, has a little link that says the same thing in all the languages, but a lot of the languages, I think that would probably be a low-cost good thing.
I would have to check. Off the top of my head, I don't know if the city website, I know our website has one of those Google options where you can essentially translate it into any language. I would assume the city website does, but I would have to check to verify. But it goes straight to the City of Hartford's website, to the DPW page about parking.
Oh, okay. So
but-
maybe that's a problem that's already solved, in which case.
I can check if it is.
Forget I said anything.
I don't understand it. Do you understand?
And then I'll just say, because Councilman Hernandez brought up that question about he's not listening to me, but brought up that question about the app. I remember a couple of years ago, we had talked about, some folks up here about, like, what would it cost us to develop an app that would have helped with clearing snow from sidewalks. And I looked into what it cost to develop an app, and it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's like really expensive. So just to back you up, it's really expensive.
In my former life, my previous boss, not an app, but had developed like an internal website, and again, hundreds of thousands of dollars for something that ended up not being particularly functional. Good development particularly, is pricey.
Oh, one other thing. What Councilman Gale was talking about having you all do more things, one of the things that I talked to your predecessor about, that we would need the legislature to let you do, but I think y'all would do better, is enforcement of non-criminal moving and equipment violations. It's a thing to think about.
I'm going to have to email you for more information about that if you don't mind.
Is there any particular areas of the city that have any rules of parking, let's say 3 days on one side, 3 days on the other side? Does that actually exist in any parts of the city?
The odd even, there's still odd even in quite a few parts of the city. As we've been
Okay.
doing sanitation, we've been essentially removing it anywhere we can. Largely when odd even is in place, it's because the street isn't wide enough to accommodate parking safely on both sides. And I believe at the time it might have been more of a sanitation. They would do one side and switch for that reason. But given that that's not how we operate anymore, having people sort of arbitrarily have to move their cars back and forth is a really significant burden for a lot of people, especially depending on their work schedule. So that's something that HPA and DPW have been working on, is as we're going through these streets, we're removing odd even, picking the side that has more available space to be the parking side, making no parking on the other side, and again, proceeding with 2 weeks of bilingual warnings.
Are there any particular areas or residential areas where this odd even rule is applied, that are residential, especially apartment buildings or apartment sections
Yes.
that will create that issue of, okay, we all have to park on this one side. So he's talking about both sides of residence and apartments. On one side, there's not enough space for everybody. Does that create, have you seen that issue being raised as a concern?
Well, you're going to be getting the same amount of parking, ideally even a little bit more. If we're choosing the side that has more, you'll be getting that amount consistently. I will say in some of the changes we've already made, there are some people who just aren't happy with the specific side that was chosen, and we are explaining the determination is made on, what has more possible parking available and then existing infrastructure of poles and things like that. But I've had to tell a few people that we don't want to be changing the decision that was made for those very objective reasons based on subjective feedback. We want to be doing it because it's the best decision for the area. But some people are not necessarily happy if cars are parked in front of their house, if they used to be half the time.
Thank you. Councilman Gale.
Yeah, just one follow-up. If certainly the benefit, I mean, I get it that people don't like having to move across the street, but I've lived in other cities where this is everybody does it, And there's actually one reason for absolutely doing it, and that is if you don't, the street sweepers have a difficult time ever getting to that side of the street. So I would ask that you make sure with DPW that if
Oh, the
we
street
think
sweeping
through
is...
whether we should eliminate this alternate side of the street parking, or if you're going to, you got to come up with some method for getting everybody off the street for a couple of hours so that you can do some street sweeping on a routine basis.
This is being done with DPW's blessing. The idea is the street sweeping will be done in that same sanitation operations period as the trash pickup. All the signage that's going up doesn't say trash day. It specifically says sanitation operations because they're planning on combining those efforts into the same time period and getting them both achieved at the same time.
So would those people then, if they're, all right, everybody's told you're parking on the west side of the street, except on sanitation day.
Except
when
on
you can't park on the
sanitation.
west side of the street, are you then allowed to park on the east side of the street that day?
No, on sanitation day, vehicles are supposed to be off both sides of the street. There is a pilot program with DPW that we're working on. They had selected certain streets that are being identified as safe parking zones, where if you don't have off-street parking, you can put your car there on sanitation day without having to deal with any possible citations. And those are all available on the DPW website. You can search the location and see what's proximate to you to decide where to put your car if you need to. And I know we've been occasionally receiving requests from people who don't think there's anything nearby to them, and we're trying to be, I say we, me and DPW, are trying to be responsive to those kinds of requests and sort of look at what's putting in place and whether we can make any adjustments to accommodate people. But it's very much a pilot program, so there's going to be a lot of, I think, sort of looking at what's happening and being responsive.
Yeah, good luck with it, because you're never gonna satisfy everybody. You could think about allowing everybody to park across the street and just making the people put their trash cans all on the same side of the street. I understand that means you'd have to roll your can across the street, but I came from an era when nobody in Hartford thought they could roll their own trash can out. We had rollout service forever, and that was, you know, a seismic change that people thought was going to result in an overabundance of rats in the city, because people just weren't going to be able to get their trash cans out to the curb, and voila, everybody figured it out. So getting them, you know, that other 50 feet across the street, they might actually be able to do it at some point.
I do think that could be viable. I mean, if they're trying to do the sweeping at the same side, that wouldn't solve that problem, and then the odd even would make sense again. This general plan was definitely created and started before I took the position, but I think there were reasons on DPW's side that they wanted to do this sort of a restriction. And I don't want to speak for them as to why that makes sense for their operations, but I know that there was a lot of thought from both parties as to why to do it this way, but I was not privy to a lot of those earlier discussions, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rosado, do you have any question? I know you just joined us now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to commend Ms. Turlo for the excellent job that she's doing at the Parking Authority, and just express that, you know, just want to thank you.
Councilwoman Rosado, I'm just going to interrupt you because we can't hear you very well. Can you maybe try to speak up, or I don't know if the folks in the back of
Sure.
the room can turn her up a little bit?
I can't tell what she was saying.
Go ahead, try again.
Can you hear me better now?
Much better.
Okay. I just want to thank Ms. Turlo for the great job that she's doing over at the Parking Authority. I know for the past year, my office, when I was council president, we went back and forth with a lot of concerns from the residents, from the small businesses, and she has gone above and beyond, and her staff, to address these issues. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and we're lucky to have you.
Thank you so much. That's very meaningful to me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Seeing that there are no other questions, we're going to conclude this meeting at this point. So thank you very much for your presentation and for your willingness to stay here until this time. So thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.